Hello, everybody. This is Catholic Dad episode number 363. Catholics don't do that. And so, I work in healthcare, and this COVID time's kind of weird. You can't allow people in the hospitals. People are dying in the ICUs all alone. Old people are literally not being touched the last moments of their lives as they succumb to this disease. And Catholics don't do that, because really the dying process is one where people are supposed to be celebrated. The dying process is one where people are not supposed to feel alone. But we've kind of turned the system upside down in fear of the disease, where nobody's really able or willing to go in and touch the patients as they die. And I have a good buddy. He's a nurse in an ICU. And he said that he's kind of been breaking some rules a little bit. He's been going to the ICUs, and he said he had a 94-year-old guy the other day, probably World War II vet. Didn't know if he was baptized or not. He comes in full-blown sepsis, and he's fighting for life. And he went in there. He said, I took care of business, and I put my hand on his head, and I told him. He said, I'm here with you. You are not alone. You're not alone. If you need to go, you can go. You're taken care of. And he died 2 minutes later. And what happens when old people are dying in beds and they're all alone is what they start to despair. It's not just old people in beds, but it's people in general. When we kind of separate ourselves out from society, and we don't hang out with each other, we don't touch each other, we don't have human interaction. People start getting lonely, and we also start despairing. And who wants us to despair? It's the devil. The ultimate form of despair is suicide. And the devil wants us to despair so much that we think there's not hope. Well, think about it. You're in a hospital ICU bed for, say, 2 weeks as an old person. You're all alone. Nobody's touched you. Nobody's allowed to touch you. And you're not even allowed to see most of your family members. And as you go out of this world, you can start despairing. And in fact, you can actually curse the Lord in your dying breath, which that's not a position anybody should be in, really, because if you have mortal sin or blasphemy on your soul as you leave this world, it's not a good position to be in, because you can actually end up in hell. And so I actually think, by the way, what we're doing to these people is, it's a shame that people are dying of COVID. Any lost life is a lost life, and that's sad. But a lost soul is a much bigger deal. And I think we're actually driving people into hell with how we're treating the old dying people in this COVID crisis, that nobody's allowed to interact with them, tell them they love them. Nobody's allowed to kiss them on the cheek. When my grandpa died, shortly before he died, my dad and I gave him a good shave, and helping each other out. 3 generations of Catholic dads shaving an old man as he leaves the earth, petting his head, giving him a haircut, making him feel better. And he knew we were there, and I literally just scratched his head for, I don't know, 30 minutes as he just sat there, and you could tell it relaxed him, and he knew that was somebody was there, and he enjoyed my presence, even though he didn't necessarily know it was me who was there. But Catholics don't do that. We don't separate ourselves out from each other. We don't run from the sick. We don't quarantine ourselves off from the sick, and we certainly don't quarantine ourselves when we're healthy. Because we could be losing souls in the process. We can make people despair. We can increase the suffering, and this whole economic calamity, we're going to be increasing the suffering for a lot of poor, marginalized people. That is the Christian mission, is we're supposed to take care of those people. We're not supposed to create those people. And so Catholics don't do this. I mean, the people that do this, by the way, allow people to die cold and alone. Those are called communists. That's what they did in Soviet Russia. They'd ship people off to the gulags and put them in a cold cell where nobody could touch them. And they'd put them in these like 2x2 square cells, so you can only stand up, and they would freeze you out, and you'd be freezing cold, and you couldn't sit. You had to lean against the wall, but it wasn't tight enough to lean and not use your muscles. So you weren't able to sleep. You couldn't get comfortable, and they would barely feed you enough to keep you alive, and you'd be shivering. They'd do that for hours and hours and hours on end. And sometimes you would die of your starvation. You'd die of your, of the elements, of being too cold. And if you were lucky, a bat would fly into your cell, and you could grab it and you could eat the wings off of it. Like that was the great, the treat for you, that you could actually eat a rodent. But that's what communists do to their people. And it feels like, to me, that's what we're doing to our people too. And really, I'm not going to be afraid of things that make me lead to the destruction of the souls of my fellow man. I'm not going to do it. And today I went out, and I actually went out to the store, and I bought something from a sales guy, a local store, not going to the big box stores, buying local, trying to support my local economy. And he looked me in the eye and he stuck his hand out. I gave him a warm handshake, and I said, "Thank you for the handshake." He said, "Thank you for the sale." And so, yeah, we touch each other. We take care of each other. We're a community, and we're not going to despair. We're not going to treat our elderly and sick like that. And so, people in medicine, this is a call to you. People in not in medicine, if your relatives are dying, you touch them, you hug them, you love them, even if they got COVID. If you're going down, we're all going down together. My kids got sick a couple weeks ago, and I put my struggle with COVID-19. Maybe I had it, maybe I don't. I tested negative, but certainly I had all the symptoms of it. But right when my kids got sick, I knelt down, I gave them a big kiss on the face, and I said, "If you're going down, we're all going down together, buddy." That's the way it works. And a bunch of my kids got sick in the house. I got sick, and that's just the way it works. We don't run from each other. We run towards each other. And that's how I'm running my life. I'm going to be a Roman Catholic till death. And I'm not going to be a communist, and I'm not going to start acting like communists. And I'll tell you what, if the government and the media and whatever else gets you to turn your neighbors in, or fear human beings, or get angry at other human beings that are not respecting your space, or you name it, they've turned you into a communist. You're just a stinking communist. That's what you are, because what your communism leads to is literally putting people in a 2x2 cold cell in Siberia. That's what your communism leads to. And your communism will lead to the destruction of their souls, where their souls will rain into hell like snowflakes, like Our Lady of Fatima said. And so people, start hugging sick people, start loving sick people, start taking care of sick people. And you know what? There's a lot of hungry and poor people coming that we're creating right now because we're acting like communists. Stop it. Let's start acting like Roman Catholics. God bless you. Live a sacramental life. Get the Mass. You can do that now. And pray the daily rosary. God bless you all. Take care.